Thank you, Rick. Now, the first thing people do ask me is, did you know Obama at Columbia? And I never saw him there either. So the truth is, he graduated a few years before I did, but that is a real common question. I always get that. So although freedom is never free, everything on the table when you come in the door to the left from the Freedom Foundation, those are all free. Brochures, DVDs, different other brochures and stuff that we give away from the Freedom Foundation. We are selling some books back there, and just drop your payment in the little bin there that says pay for the. We sell this pocket state and federal constitution, as well as an analysis of our Constitution written by the Freedom Foundation, and I have Bastiat's The Law, which is a kind of a primer on how to live in a free society. Rosa's going to be talking about Agenda 21 tonight, and something I think to always keep in mind about this stuff is that there is nothing new about trying to control people. That it's a concept as old as Plato, and at least when I went to Columbia, they still taught the Western classics. I don't know if they still do, but you know, when you read Plato's Republic or Rousseau or Marx, you get a chance to see that these concepts come in various guises over time, but they all basically represent the fundamental part of trying to control people and how we live by whether that's a philosopher king, whether that's a dictator, whether that's some other utopian scheme. And there's always this utopian future that if we all just suffer together, that we'll be able to achieve it. So, and you see that every time you read it. So, yeah, I know. So when I was in college, Agenda 21 was passed. I actually went to school with a lot of kids whose parents worked at the United Nations. It was just down the street from Columbia, and so some of them send their kids to Columbia University as well. And I thought it was a joke. I remember specifically making fun of this law. It was an agreement they had down in Brazil, and I remember ridiculing this on campus, just amongst my friends and other people, libertarians and other folk, and we did make fun of it. We thought, what a ridiculous thing. Particularly because at that time the Berlin Wall had just fallen, and I remember thinking that how can anybody conceive of these ideas or concepts as being legitimate or acceptable? But you know, it's not so funny anymore when we actually get a chance to see these things in action. And there is an answer to this always, and that is that I always believe in saying, think globally and act locally. Now we've heard that before. And that applies to us just as much as it does to the other side. Think globally about freedom and liberty and what that means to us, and implement it locally, because our freedoms and our liberties are under attack. Not in a distant city 3,000 miles away, although they do a pretty good job there too. But the actual implementation and how it affects you in your day-to-day life is happening in your school board, it's happening in your city council, it's happening in your planning commissions, your assessor's office. It's local. And you have control, and a lot more control, over what goes on locally. So getting involved in local politics, that is where the battle happens, and that is what you must do. The Freedom Foundation is a nonpartisan organization, but we do teach people how to be engaged and active as an activist group, and how you can get involved and actually make a difference in your community, and how to educate people to do that. And I think that that's important. Today's school board members are tomorrow's legislators. They are. It's today's school board members, your fire district council, the ditch commissioner, your city councilman. Tomorrow, they become your legislators, your senators and your governors, and heads of different agencies. So it matters who you run for those offices, and you have to get involved. Apathy is our enemy. It isn't the people who are implementing this program. It's the apathy of the people with whom we live. And I think that it's very important for us to not lose sight of that. And Rosa Koire is a nationally renowned author and activist. Some of you might have seen her on the Glenn Beck show recently. Also the Alex Jones show, so she's able to be in a lot of different venues. And she is the executive director of the Post-Sustainability Institute, a district branch chief for California's DOT and commercial real estate appraiser specializing in eminent domain valuation. And Rose has been touring the country with her story about how the blueprint of Agenda 21 is impacting almost every aspect of our life. So with that, I want to mention that when she's done, she's going to be available to answer questions as well. So if you have them, and you should have a few, feel free to ask her, but wait until she's done at the very end. So with that, I want to introduce Rosa Koire.
Wow, great to be here. Is that too loud, or how do you feel about the sound? Is it good? Great. Well, you know, this is what I like. It's a nice big room full of people, because we need to get this information out to as many people as we can, and this is what we do, because we are in the resistance all across the nation. And you're not going to see this information in your mainstream press. You won't see it, you're not going to see it on the evening news. You're not going to see it in your newspaper unless they're putting in some disinformation stuff, because they're afraid that you might get the real scoop. So I'm glad that you made it tonight. It's great that you're here, and I am very glad that I'm here with you. And I want you to know that, yes, I am a liberal Democrat. And some people, are kind of, by the end of my speech, they're like, you are not a libertarian. And it's funny, because the libertarians always think I'm a libertarian, and the Republicans always think I'm a Republican, but the Democrats never think I'm a Democrat. So they must be doing something wrong. So, it's kind of an edgy thing to talk about United Nations Agenda 21, Sustainable Development, but I am accustomed to being out on the edge, because that's where I am all the time, going around the nation and helping people to understand what this is about, what it looks like, and what to do to stop it in your town. Because Glenn's right, it's local. And that, think global, act local, that is a UN slogan. That's the United Nations slogan. It's kind of filtered down into everything. So, as Americans, you're going to find yourselves deeply at odds with and completely concerned by the United Nations agenda for the 21st century. And that, of course, is why they call it Agenda 21. It's not Area 51. It's not Catch 22. It's Agenda 21, the agenda for the 21st century. Okay, that is not something that, it's not a fringe thing. It's not that I made it up and I'm calling it Agenda 21. That is what the United Nations calls it, and what the 179 nations that signed onto the agreement call it. Okay? It's a blueprint. It is the action plan to inventory and control all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all means of production, all energy, all information, and all human beings in the world. Inventory and control. It is a completely comprehensive plan. In fact, it is a transition from representative government to government without jurisdictional boundaries by unelected boards and commissions. This is how you lose your control over what's happening to you. You'll still have your elected officials, but they will merely be able to rubber stamp these plans, because this is government by unelected boards and commissions. So you see the erasure of jurisdictional boundaries, the loss of private property rights, and of course you want to remember that you are your most important private property. So we're talking about a loss of sovereignty, and not just our national or our local sovereignty, but our sovereignty over our persons. There's not anything much more important than this, is there? So you're going to be concerned about it not just as Americans, but as free human beings, because this is a worldwide plan, and it is nonpartisan. It doesn't matter what your political affiliation is. It's not, when I first heard about it, I thought, well, of course I thought it was crazy. And it is crazy. The plan is crazy. I'm not crazy. The plan is. So, when I first heard about it, I thought, well, this is some right-wing, this is some right-wing thing. I mean, come on, I don't believe this. It's kind of some crazy thing. And then I checked it out. And then I saw that, no, it has nothing to do with parties. It has everything to do with freedom. And freedom is nonpartisan. All Americans want to be free. All free people. All people want to be free. So, United Nations Agenda 21, Sustainable Development, was signed onto by 179 nations, including the United States, in 1992 at the United Nations Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. George H.W. Bush committed the United States to implementing Agenda 21, and it has been supported by every president ever since. It's a global plan, and it is implemented locally. And that is its strength, but it's also its weakness, because that's where we are, right? We are local. So, United Nations Agenda 21, Sustainable Development, is the biggest public relations scam in the history of the world. But it's actually far more than that. It's a recipe for destruction. It enables and justifies. Enables and justifies monitoring, metering, and restricting our energy and water usage. And you'll see that as smart meters. And if you don't have smart water meters now, you will, unless you fight it, because this is the plan, to meter your water, meter your wells, and meter your water that you get from the city as well. So it's also enabling and justifying the instituting of a carbon tax on industry, pulverizing our roads and destroying our dams, sinking our economy, exhausting our military with endless war, diagnosing a huge portion of our population with mental illness and drugging us, sometimes from childhood all the way through to our entire lives. It bleeds our transportation budget. It justifies bleeding our transportation budget with those high-cost trains, high-speed rail that goes nowhere. Revamping our school system by inserting sustainable development principles into every course from pre-kindergarten all the way to postgraduate school. Declaring our public lands off limits to humans. Changing every land use document in our nation to require high-density housing in city centers. And that's so that we can be more easily controlled, monitored, and surveilled. It allows for warrantless searches and domestic surveillance, identifying us as enemy combatants right here in the homeland. You know, if an enemy was trying to destroy us, it couldn't do a better job, could it? Because what would an enemy do? What did we do in Iraq? What do? We go in and we destroy the infrastructure. We infiltrate the government. We change the educational system because it's a battle for the hearts and minds, right? Control energy, control resources. This is what's happening. This is the erection of a corporatocracy. It is a global totalitarian state, and it is happening now. It doesn't come with flashing lights. And somehow, all of us in America, we think it can't happen here. It is happening here. This is what it looks like. And I know it sounds crazy. And I'm going to show you how this is happening. So, of course, there's an overarching sort of political and social philosophy that goes with this, right? Because all big political movements and social movements have a philosophy. And this has one too. It's called communitarianism. And communitarianism says that the individual's rights have to be balanced with the rights of the community. Now, we're Americans, and we have, our individual rights are guaranteed to us, right? From our Constitution, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, this is guaranteed to us. It is not granted to us by our government, right? Can't be taken away by our government. We were born with those rights. They were granted to us by our Creator. But under communitarianism, your rights are granted or taken away by the government. And the community's rights are weighed against the rights of the individual. And the community's rights always weigh more than the individual's rights. The individual is always, always a threat to the community. Because, well, if you're selfish and you're not thinking about the common good, then you are a threat to the common good. And in this case, we're talking about community, we're talking about global community, but you're also talking about your local community. You might be talking about your neighborhood association. You might be talking about your town. You might be talking about your state, whatever. This is your community, okay? Now, the way I like to think about this, I know some of you have seen me do this, but it's a nice visual because it kind of gives you the sense of what it means when your individual rights are balanced against the rights of the community. Okay? So let's do this. Let's take a clear glass of water, okay? And that is your constitutional republic. That's what we have here in the United States. Clear glass of water, constitutional republic. We're going to put that down here. Now we're going to take a glass of milk. And this is your communitarian state. Communitarian state is, for instance, Red China, Communist Russia, Nazi Germany. It's all for the fatherland, right? All for the common good. Now we're going to take a clear glass pitcher, going to put it down here, and we're going to balance the constitutional republic with the communitarian state. We're going to balance those by pouring them in there. What do you have? You got milk, right? You got milk. You have now balanced your individual rights with the rights of the community. Your individual rights are now subsumed into the rights of the community, and they are outweighed, they are outbalanced by the rights of the community. This is really important when you think about yourself as an individual and how important it is. Our constitutional rights are guaranteed to us as individuals. So another thing that we want to think about too is that Agenda 21 is dependent on the Hegelian dialectic. And I know your brain just shuts down when you think about that. It's like, what is that? Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's that a crisis is posed, and then a solution is posed. And the balance between the two then becomes the new normal, the compromise, right? You know, you gotta be fair, right? So here you go. You've got your balance here. You've got your new normal. You've got your third way that you never would have agreed to if it hadn't been for that crisis, right? The balance between these is now the new normal. So here's another example. How do you get that? You go from white to black in just a couple of minutes, right? Here you are, you're white, somebody wants you to be black. Well, we're going to compromise. We're going to be dark gray. Now we're going to compromise again. We're going to be darker gray. Now we're going to do it one more time, and now you're black. You never would have agreed to get to this point, but through balancing out your rights, you have moved all the way from white to black. So, what's the crisis? What's your crisis? Global warming, climate change, right? Climate change. Global warming, climate change. Climate change, I don't know. It's serious. Oh my goodness. The planet's in danger, right? The sea levels are rising. In 100 years, you're going to need a snorkel to get out of bed. You guys, all of Washington's just going to be underwater, right? There's no time to lose, right? Biodiversity, we're losing it, panic, chaos, collapse. This kind of way of thinking is essential to this plan, because when you are panicked, you cannot think clearly. You must act, right? So this is what it's about. It's about keeping you on the edge, making you feel that you can't think clearly about this. You have to act now because the planet is in danger. I'll give you an example from my local rag. It's hard to deny that the Earth is functioning well over capacity. Like an overworked horse, it's just a matter of time before the global organism collapses. Woo! Feel that? Feel that panic? Feel that panic? Yeah. Okay. All intelligent people agree that it's our fault. Your greedy, selfish, wasteful ways are almost destroying the planet. Yeah. So what are we going to do about it? What's going to happen now? Okay. Here comes the United Nations to the rescue. Here it is. We're going to save the planet. The UN World Commission on Environment and Development in 1987. They said, okay, we've got this serious problem here. They're the ones, now I know you've seen the term sustainable development, right? Sustainable, everybody thinks they know. What is this? Sustainable development water. Everybody thinks it's a sustainable development pin. Everybody's seen that term. You think you know what it is. This is where it came from. The United Nations in 1987, the World Commission on Environment and Development came out with a book. It's called Our Common Future. What is sustainable development? Development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. That sounds good, doesn't it? I mean, who wants to compromise the ability of future generations to meet their needs? Nobody. I don't think that the pilgrims did not arrive on our shores or whatever and say, let's do what we can to mess it up for the people in the year 2012. No, all of us wanted, this is what you want for your children. You want to create a better world. You want, okay, no one's going to disagree with that. So what did they do? They said, yes, indeed, everything we're doing now is compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So what are we going to do about it? So the General Assembly of the United Nations said to that World Commission on Environment and Development, they said, will you guys come back in 5 years with the action plan, with the blueprint for sustainable development? And they said, sure. And that's what happened. 1992, the Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This is Agenda 21. This is what they call you a tinfoil hat nut for. It's a real thing. And program of action from Rio. You can get this at un.org. It's 25 bucks. You can bear to give the United Nations any money. So it's the action plan. Okay. Now the Secretary General of that commission was Maurice Strong. And I know you guys remember Maurice Strong from the oil for food scandal. He had to split the United States and go live in China, which seems like there's no contradiction there for them. Anyway, so Maurice Strong, what did he say? Well, look, if you've got sustainable development, there's got to be a definition of what's unsustainable, right? So what's unsustainable? The affluent middle-class lifestyle of the Americans. Now, he didn't say of the Americans, but you can bet that that's what that is. That is single-family residences, private vehicles, appliances, meat eating, air conditioning. These are just a few things. Dams, reservoirs, you might use that water. Livestock, tillage. Yeah, farming. If you don't have one of those $250,000 seed injection machines, you are a danger to the planet. You are a threat to the planet. This is unsustainable, okay? So there's an image that goes with Agenda 21, and it's in my book and all around. You will see it everywhere. It's this. I hope you can see this, but I'll just tell you what it is. It's 3 interlocking circles. You've seen it. It's a Venn diagram, in fact, for if you're into math at all. And this is what it is. These are the 3 pillars. They take themselves very seriously. The 3 pillars. Okay, so we have environment, or ecology, economy, and equity, social equity, the 3 E's. Environment, economy, and social equity. And when they're all, see there are 3 interlocking circles. When they're in, where they come to in the center, where they come together in the center, that's where it's all in balance, and that's sustainable development. Okay, that's their image of sustainable development. So you're going to see that. You will see those 3 circles. They look like a kind of a piece of the Olympic symbol a little bit. You're going to see that, or when you see those 3 words together in your government documents, economy, ecology, and social equity, you will see those. They always link the 3 of them together. You know that's a tell. You're going to, in case you're not sure, when you see that, you know you're looking at Agenda 21. So this involves economics. It's every aspect of our lives. Economics, housing, transportation, land use, health, water, energy, food production, and population control. The Chinese have their own Agenda 21 documents. And if you go online and check them out, you will see that they are working on a population control sterilization vaccine with the United States. It's in development right now. So something you want to know about this plan is that it is also based on the precautionary principle. Now that's number 15 of Agenda 21. Okay? Now check this out, because this is really, really important. Because, you know, if you're... Now, I am not taking a position on global warming. Right. But anyway, so, but let's just say you don't agree with global warming. And you say, I've got 10 scientists here who think it's bunk. I've got 50. You know, I have 1,000. Well, I've got 10,000. I have 25,000 scientists. I have 30. I have 60,000. I've got 100,000 scientists who say that there is no such thing as anthropogenic global warming. So what? And why? Because of the precautionary principle in Agenda 21. What is it? It says that if an action or a policy has a suspected risk of causing harm to the public or the environment in the absence of scientific consensus,
No way.
that the policy or the action is harmful, the burden of proof that it is not harmful falls on the party taking the action. Got that? Guilty until proven innocent. Isn't that nice? It's great. In the EU, that's compulsory. They use it to make law. In the United States, we call it the precautionary approach. And supposedly, it only makes policy. And doesn't that make you feel a lot better about it? So, in 1992, they signed, okay, now this Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit, Agenda 21, is not a treaty. It is an agreement. It's an agreement. And it was not ratified by the Congress, did not need to be ratified by our Congress. It was not. But you should know about agreements with the United Nations that when the signature of your highest, person, president, what do you know? Your president signs it. What does that mean? It means that your government will not create policy that contradicts it. So they went way further than that, though. So 179 world leaders signed that. Now, okay, that was around June of 1992. In November, of course, Clinton got elected. In January, he took office. And 6 months later, in June of 1993, he created the President's Council on Sustainable Development. The sole purpose of the President's Council on Sustainable Development was to implement United Nations Agenda 21 in the United States. It was made up of 12 cabinet-level secretaries, federal agencies, including HUD, Education, Commerce, Transportation, Defense, Interior, EPA, okay? Besides them, now just think about that, okay? Just let that filter in for a second. Besides that, who else was on the President's Council on Sustainable Development? Captains of industry, like Ken Lay from Enron. Yeah, this was in '93 before he, as I say, does anyone believe that Ken Lay is really dead? I mean, this is so ridiculous. Who would believe that? Yes, he died in the middle of the night. They cremated him in the morning, and that was right before he was going to jail. Yeah, I believe that. Okay, so Ken Lay from Enron was on it, and then Dow Chemical was there, and several other, corporations, Pacific Gas and Electric. And then besides them, there were non-governmental organizations like the World Resources Institute, like the Sierra Club, like the Natural Resources Defense Council, like, were you there? Did you know about it? No, you didn't know about it. So what's the first thing they did? They said, you know what? We are committed now to getting United Nations Agenda 21 into the United States. How are we going to do it? They said, what we need to do is, bring us in as a land use plan, because we got to get it into every single town, county, state in the entire U.S. We want this everywhere. We got to do it. We want to do it as quickly as possible and really make sure that it takes. So they said, let's do it as a land use plan, because it is control of land and land use. So they said, all right, let's do it like this. They gave a multi-million-dollar grant to the American Planning Association, a private group. They said, can you guys do us a favor and create something so that we can get this? They said, yeah, we'll do it for you. And they did. They came up with a book. It took them about 6 years. They wrote it. It's a 12-pound book, so I only brought the cover. It's heavy. And it's Growing Smart, Legislative Guidebook with model statutes for planning and the management of change. 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 Okay, change. So, model statutes. So when you go into your planning department, or you are sitting as a council person, or you are on your, some government board or commission or whatever, and you see staff coming forward with some new statutes, some ordinances, they didn't write that. They're getting it out of a box or a book. In this case, they got it probably out of Growing Smart, Legislative Guidebook with model statutes for planning and the management of change. Growing Smart is smart growth. You seen that term, smart growth? This is where it comes from. So by 2002, this book was in every single planning department, every university, and every college in the United States. If you're a planner now, you study that book, right? Now I was for 30 years, I was a commercial real estate appraiser specializing in eminent domain. I'm an expert witness, and I work for the Department of Transportation in California. I just retired. Now, about 10 years ago, in 2002, was when I realized that there was a planning revolution going on. And hey, how come nobody's talking about it? When I go into a planning department to find out what someone can do with their property so that I can fairly compensate them for a taking for a freeway, well, it doesn't look like there is anything that you can do with your property by right. Yeah, you've got your zoning, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to use your property. And you know how difficult it makes it for an appraiser who's testifying to be able to justify valuing a property when you cannot prove what it's worth because you cannot prove what can be done with it. And I got tossed out of planning departments all over the San Francisco Bay Area. And I thought it was just there. And I didn't know about Agenda 21 yet. So here's something else that happened. The President's Council on Sustainable Development. They said, yeah, we will get all those federal agencies to change their policies to bring them into compliance with United Nations Agenda 21 principles. We can do that administratively. And we've got this book now, and we're going to get it into every single city, town, county, and state in the U.S., every university. But the people of the United States might not be too happy when they realize that they have been manipulated, and when they wake up and they recognize that they're living in a dictatorship. So we have to make them think it's all their idea. So isn't this great? So they commissioned, it's brilliant really, they commissioned another book, and it's called Sustainable America, A New Consensus. It ought to be a movie, it's just got that, a new consensus, right? Now you know what consensus is, right? You look, now I'm not talking about the new consensus, but I'm talking about the dictionary definition of consensus is agreement of all parties. Look at how hard it would be if we sat here all night and tried to agree on something. Real consensus is we stay in here in this room until we all agree. That's consensus. But the new consensus, your government's giving you the new consensus. What's the new definition for consensus? Neutralization of the opposition. Neutralizing your enemies. Neutralize and convert. Now they're using a technique, your government, in these government meetings in these visioning meetings. They're using a technique that they got from the Rand Corporation, a mind control technique called the Delphi technique, right? And what that does is it's designed to bring groups, and they can use it on one person all the way to the entire world, and you can bet that the entire world is being Delphied right now. So this is how it works. They take a group of people they get them into a situation where they feel that they are having some impact, where what they're talking about, what they're working on is their thing. They're developing it, right? They bring a group of people to a predetermined outcome while giving them the impression that it was all their idea. You are so smart. You came up with that Vision 2040 plan all on your own. Aren't you great? Yeah. Isn't that incredible? And they're doing it all over the United States. Everywhere. A new consensus. This is a subversion of neighborhood groups because you know what they do. Who's they? They. It is your government at this point. Your government is actually actively engaged in doing this. And if there are any planners in the room, I want you to know that there should be Nuremberg laws for planners. Because, you know, that thing, oh, I was just following orders, that went out in 1945. Or, what else? What else did they used to say? I was just following orders and I forget the other thing. But anyway, we're not going for that. We don't accept that. It is not the job of a planner to make sure that you can't use your property. And this is something that we need to stand behind any planner who wishes to be fair. We need to make sure that those planners who stand up against the planning departments, any staff who stands up against planning departments should be supported by the people. And if they lose their job, the real community makes sure that they have a nice job that pays them at least what they were earning before. Although that's pretty hard for planners, because they're making way more than they should. So, anyway, okay, so you've got collaborators and shills right there in your neighborhood association, because this is what this is about, right? Because how do you get consensus? You're going to see this building capacity, building consensus, right? Now, how do you get that? You've got to infiltrate the community, and what do? They find people who are likely people who say, oh, they go to the meeting and they think, oh, this is really cool. I really dig this. I love this. I am so on board with this. And they go, how would you like to represent your neighborhood? Do you have a neighborhood association in your neighborhood? You don't? Well, how would you like to start one? And then you are the representative of your neighborhood. That's one way it's done. Consensus, right? The other way is to actually take over a neighborhood association because, you know, we're busy. We got stuff to do. We don't really pay much attention to who's running our neighborhood association. Who cares, right? That's how it happens. So, for anybody who thinks I'm making this up, here's a good little conversation piece for you. This is, you can get this for 99 cents on Amazon. This is Rescue Mission Planet Earth, a children's edition of Agenda 21. Isn't it great? Oh, it's got pictures by the children of the world. Like I like to say, I'm sure they got their royalties for this, right? Boutros Ghali of the UN. And there's little, you know, it's hours of fun about how we're destroying the planet. There's one little quote here I like. It says, "The planet groans every time it registers another birth." Yeah, you gotta love it, don't you? This is being taught to children. This is an old book. Does that make you feel bad? It's from like 1994. It's been out there a long time. There's a little workbook in the back. Here's something on it. It says, "Turning Agenda 21 into action is a big challenge for us all. Thousands of people at the United Nations and in governments are working on it. This booklet will show parents and educators how children can start to be a part of this work." Yeah, children. How children can start to be a part of this work. Your children are being indoctrinated. You know, education now is not about content. It's not knowledge-based. It's not about knowledge. It's about training. It's about training you to be a global citizen, a cooperator, someone who knows how to get along, go along to get along, right? A global citizen. This is dog training, rat training. That's what this is about, okay? This is not about teaching content. This is about changing behavior. Outcome-based education, mastery learning, direct instruction, lifelong learning. For those of you who are getting that little booklet from your, your recreation department, you go take a look at that. Lifelong learning, you're going to see that. This is Agenda 21. This is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. It doesn't come called Agenda 21. You'll never see that. So here's what I call the green mask. The idea, of course, is that it just costs too much. Well, first of all, who lives in a house? Live in a house, raise your hand. You are so bad. Very bad. Now, if you live in the suburbs or the rural areas, it costs too much money to get public transportation out to you. This is the story. This is a green mask. It costs too much money to get transportation out to you, public transportation. So we got to get you into the city center where you can be in that high-density smart growth. Smart growth. What is smart growth? Ground floor retail, built right to the edge of the sidewalk, often vacant, often bankrupt, with 1 or 2 or more stories of residential on top of that. Those are condos or apartments, often empty. Around the back in the alley, there's access for 1 car per unit or less. Out in the front, there's a nice sidewalk area. A lot of times you'll have colored concrete, nice lights. And then you have a bike lane. You got 1 lane of one travel lane, because you know your road is on a diet, like you. And then in the middle of the street, there's a median, and on the other side of the street, it's the same. Okay? This is the preferred street model for Agenda 21. Why? Because it messes up traffic, and it makes it so you're going to kill people on bikes. Oh, you're so bad. You hit that person on a bicycle who rode through the red light with their hands on their head. I ride a bike. Bicycling is great. I love to ride bikes. It is not my religion. Bicyclists are being used. Bicycle coalitions are being used to push this plan. Okay, so the idea is to get you into the city center where you can be more easily managed and controlled and surveilled. That's right. Now, one of the ways that they're doing it is with an international organization, and I know you've heard of it now, called ICLEI, the International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives, ICLEI. Now, that's what it used to be called. Now they call it Local Governments for Sustainability. Like ICLEI does not stand for anything anymore. Because they don't want you to know that they're international and they're headquartered in Bonn, Germany. And that they are in, I don't know, they're in over 100 countries. And they lie about how many people are in the city, how many cities they represent. I caught this, I found this on their website. I'm going to tell you about ICLEI in a second. Let me just tell you this. They were one of the sponsors for Rio Plus 20, which is, the 20th anniversary of Rio de Janeiro. It just happened in June, right? And they have they put up a new website just for that. And I went to it, and I'm glad I did. I got a screenshot for a minute, because they still, on their old websites, show that they represent, that they have 1,200 members. Those are cities. 1,200 city members worldwide. They really have almost 8,000. Almost 8,000. There are over 1,300 cities in the United States that are members of ICLEI. It was created in 1990 to implement United Nations Agenda 21 worldwide. It's a stealth organization. A stealth organization. It's a non-governmental organization, but it's made up of elected officials. Elected officials serve on its boards. In fact, Margaret Hagler, who was who's on the city council for Seattle, is on the executive board of ICLEI. National. They gauge livability Don't you love this? I mean, they got their whole jargon. They got a whole, you know, it's like the word change, right? You think change is what you got in your pocket or something, you know, organic movement, transitional things, right? No, change and the word transformation. What that really means is total destruction of your existing traditional life. That's what change is about. That's the real change. Okay, so ICLEI, it is a policy and legislation arm of the United Nations Agenda 21. And they supposedly gauge livability, like we need them to do that for us. They measure inventory, your energy usage. Remember, inventory and control. They measure and inventory your energy usage. And something really big is happening that people don't know, most people don't know this, is that ICLEI is just coming out with their water campaign. They're rolling it out in Southeast Asia. It's in Southeast Asia and Australia and New Zealand. It is a monitoring and gauging and control mechanism for water. This is an international organization that has access to all of your information on how much energy you use, what the sources of it are. Now, you know, when Obama was running for election the last time, he committed the United States to, I don't think he meant he and Michelle and the kids, but us. He committed us to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions 80% below 1990 levels by the year 2050. 2050 is the drop dead date. I don't know, maybe it's because we're all going to be drop dead by then. I don't know. Anyway. Unfortunately. So, maybe you'll see. So, yeah, and you know, by the way, we need more young people. We need more young people to come and hear this information, right? We got to spread this information. By the way, you are in the resistance now. You are the resistance, in case you weren't sure. So, okay, Obama committed the United States 80%, we're going to drop our greenhouse gas emissions 80% below 1990 levels by the year 2050. So, of course, I'm a math person, so I think to myself, what's that going to look like? You know, what year were we actually producing 80% of 1990 levels? You know, when was that, right? So I find a chart, I get the chart, I look, okay. What year? For people who don't know, what year? What year were we at? That's close. 1934. 1934, a stellar year for the United States. I know, you know. We weren't producing much of anything at the in the depths of the Depression, 1934. That was when we were producing 80% below 1990 levels greenhouse gas emissions. But, you know, of course, since there's more of us now than there were in 1934, on a per capita level, on a per capita basis, you're down to 1880s, right, on your pony, except you got too many greenhouse gas emissions there, so you're going to be on your bike. That's right. So that's what it looks like, okay? Now there's 25 cities and 5 counties in Washington State that are members of ICLEI. Now, I'm going to say that Bellevue just dropped their membership. But Redmond didn't. Seattle, Tacoma, King County is a member. Now, you know, you're paying dues to it. You never heard of it. Very likely, if you go back and do a, and I suggest you do this, do a Freedom of Information Act or a public records request and find out when exactly it was that they signed on to it. Who signed on to it? Did they have it? Open meeting? It's hard to find that. A lot of times they did not. So you should go and check it out. Okay? So, by the way, you know about Kyoto, right? You know the Kyoto, U.S. did not ratify the Kyoto Treaty. You know that. Oh, but that didn't stop 1,055 United States mayors. They did. They did sign on to it, basically, and this was the idea of Seattle Mayor Greg Nichols. With ICLEI. It's an ICLEI project, and it is called Climate Protection Campaign, the Mayor's Climate Protection Campaign. You can go online. Hey, I'm not making anything up here, by the way. If I'm speculating or I'm goofing around, I'll tell you. I have there's solid documentation for all of this. So, source documentation, okay? So this is the Mayor's Climate Protection Campaign. Oh, I feel so much safer now. And 34 cities in Washington State signed on to that. And what is Kyoto? It's meets or exceeds, they meet or exceed the Kyoto Treaty Agreement. It's a land use agreement to implement smart growth and get you out of that evil sprawl you're living in now. Also, carbon trading is part of it. Carbon trading. So, I checked out Kyoto. I thought, Kyoto, let's see. Kyoto's been out there for a while. I wonder what nation, it's an international thing, right? I wonder which nation reduced their greenhouse gas emissions the most out of all those countries that signed on to Kyoto. I wonder who, any ideas? Any ideas? No, you're all wrong. Latvia. Tiny Latvia, clinging desperately to the edge of the Soviet Union. Teeny tiny Latvia reduced its greenhouse gas emissions the most. Now, what is Latvia known for? They were a Soviet bloc country. They are known for building these huge concrete blocks where with one little button they could shut off your heat in November. And they are also known for something else, and that is their human rights abuses. So what does that tell you? That tells you that you too can reduce your greenhouse gas emissions a whole lot. All you have to do is stop using your energy and treat your people really bad. So one other thing about ICLEI, while we're on it, is they also wrote the local Agenda 21 planning guide. You'll probably find this in the planning department of your local city or county. Local Agenda 21 planning guides put out by ICLEI and the United Nations, and in it, it tells you how to run a visioning meeting and how to find the so-called stakeholders. Because these meetings, they don't just invite everybody to these meetings because they want to make sure that they stack the deck, right? They got their thumb on the scale. They want to make sure they get consensus. They don't want to risk it that you might show up. So they might put it in the newspapers about that big on page 75. It's next to the car ads or something. And you're going to find out about it maybe after it's all done. They have already done pre-meetings with people in your so-called community that have already agreed to the plans. Okay? That's how it works. So, what's the goal? The goal of UN Agenda 21, they use the green mask of environmental concern. And they impose the two parts of Agenda 21. And those are the urban part, which is smart growth, getting you into the dense city centers where you can be controlled and surveilled, and getting you out of the rural and suburban areas, and this is the wildlands, turning the areas out there where you might live right now into areas where human beings cannot go. Getting people out of rural areas and suburban areas, blocking access to roads, to wilderness roads, and to our resources, and shifting land ownership. Shifting land ownership from private ownership and control to public. And they use land trusts to do this. Conservation easements. We'll talk about that in a minute. So by 2002, of course, as I said, Growing Smart was in every single planning department, every university in the nation, and that was the planning revolution. That's when things really started to heat up. 2002 was really, of course, you have your Growth Management Act from 1990. And, most states require a comprehensive and general plan. Most states do. And that is sort of your blueprint. That's your city or your county or your state's expectation of how everything is going to be laid out in terms of land use, transportation, and where your population centers are going to be. And this is required. The Growth Management Act in Washington of 1990 required that, right? It's a blueprint, really, for housing, transportation, and business development. So I'll show you one from my area. This is from Marin County, which is the county next to my county. It's a very pretty county, rural county. I know you can't see anything. This is the cover of it. And right inside. Yeah, see that? Now you're going to see this logo in a lot of general plans all across the United States. And if you don't see the actual image, you'll see those 3 words. Remember the 3 pillars, the 3 E's? You'll see it as 3 E's. You might see planet, people, profit. That's also part of it. You see the 3 E's: environment, economy, and social equity. Okay, so how does this work? Okay, what's greasing the wheels to make this all happen? Well, it's no surprise that it's money. It's money. So, the federal and state transportation money. This is how this works. Remember I told you they do this through unelected boards and commissions, and they break jurisdictions. So this is how it works. Your federal transportation money comes through your metropolitan planning organizations and your councils of government. Your metropolitan planning organizations and your councils of government. There's over 500 of those in the U.S., and there's 14 in Washington State. Right? Now money, whether it's grants or tax dollars, transportation tax dollars, it goes direct through these regional agencies. They are not, okay, these are unelected boards. They're made up of elected officials, right? Like, for instance, here, you've got your Puget Sound Regional Council, right? They actually distribute $180 million in transportation funds a year, okay? Unelected board. It's made up of elected officials. How much influence do you have on an unelected board that actually is 4 counties: King, Pierce, Snohomish, and Kitsap, 4 counties and 72 cities. Think of the table they need for that, okay? They need a big table for it, and if you want to make, first of all, you don't even know which county they're meeting in this month. Sometimes some of them move. And this is a fairly small one. Some of them are huge, covering huge portions of the state, where you may or may not even know they exist. And if you want to have some influence there, how much influence do you think your elected official who's sitting on that board is going to have? Very little. This is an unelected board and commission that is making policy and restriction for you. If your little town wants any money, you are going to have to agree to build and subsidize and zone for smart growth. And that's what your general plan is doing. It is actually, it comes underneath your zoning. Now everybody knows about zoning, right? You all know what your zoning is. You know what you're on R1, I'm C2, you know what your zoning is. You know they can't change your zoning without notifying you, right? You got to send you a card in the mail or something. But they can change your general plan without notifying you because it's general. It may be called the comprehensive plan or the master plan for your state or for your city or for your area. Okay? They can change that without telling you. So now, guess what? You know your zone C2 commercial. You go down there to build on that piece of land and you find out that you are now general planned for transit-oriented development. Now, what does that mean? That means that you can't just put your commercial building there. You've got to put commercial and housing together. This is about putting housing together with just about everything. This is a housing plan, okay? Money for housing, subsidized. Now, you just showed me how many of you live in an apartment over a shop? Yeah, there's nobody raising their hand in this room, okay? It doesn't pencil out, and what that means is when you want to build something like that, Mrs. Developer, or Ms. Developer, you want to build that, it needs subsidies, government subsidies, because there is, what, no demand. There's no demand for it. People don't really want it. You might live in downtown San Francisco, and there you live in it if you have to. You see, if you don't have enough money to live somewhere else, you live there. The wealthy don't live there unless they live in the 80th floor and right in New York City, right? So we're talking about a building style that does not pencil out financially. It needs your transportation or your property tax dollars to subsidize it. And this is what it's about. Now, HUD gives grants. HUD grants, they give $100 million a year for what? For building anything? No. These are planning grants. Okay? Planning. Oh my goodness. Planners have it so made right now. Yeah. Do they have a vested interest? Living, you know, remember the Monsanto, I had an uncle who worked for Monsanto. You remember the Monsanto motto, better living through chemistry? Well, now it's better living through planning. Better living through planning, this is it. So, a lot of money, federal money, goes to these plans, okay? Now, in 2011 and 2013, well, 2010, $6.5 million in HUD planning grants came to Washington State for sustainable community regional planning grants. Okay? What's that money for? Visioning meetings. I think I'm kidding. Visioning meetings. That's a lot of money for those consultants. That's a psychological head trip for you, paid for with your transportation tax dollars, or your property tax dollars, or your tax dollars. Okay? Vision 2040, Puget Sound Regional Council, Sustainable Thurston, they got $1.5 million from HUD. Envision Skagit 2060, they get grants from HUD, Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, EPA. Does that ring a bell? They were all on the Residents' Council on Sustainable Development. Right? When you see climate action plans, shoreline management plans, visioning for sustainable development, livable communities, complete streets, transit villages, public-private partnerships. What are public-private partnerships? What is that? You said it. Yes, that is fascism. Yes, what that is your government becoming indistinguishable from supposedly non-governmental groups and corporations. And the way it works is the corporations fund the nonprofit group that pressures the government, and then they go back and forth. They sort of slide through these revolving doors. You have, like, what was her name? Hillary France she was on the Bainbridge Island City Council. Now she's the head of FutureWise. Now they slide back and forth. They're, like I said, Margaret Pegler from City Council in Seattle is now on the Executive Board of ICLEI. They move back and forth. They are able to make policy and then they profit from it later. But it's way bigger than that. Because like Glenn said, this kind of stuff's been going on since Hector was a pup. There's always been somebody running the world. And probably there's nobody in this room who is. I know I'm not. And there always has been. But the difference now is that there is really a total melding between non-governmental groups, corporations, and your government. And these are what public-private partnerships are. This is what's happening. So we have lost control. I'm going to touch on this for a second. Redevelopment, whether you call it urban renewal, whether you call it infrastructure financing districts, whether you call it whatever you're going to call it, this is a way to sink your economy, and this plan is about taking you down. That's what social equity is all about. Taking us down. And we have a long way to fall, but we're doing pretty good at it. So this redevelopment is the unknown government, and it uses your tax dollars to subsidize development. And this is one of the ways that it's happening. But you see, you don't have to use eminent domain when you're doing a complete street project, because hey, you got to tear up the streets. Well, that's legitimate public use, right? And you might as well take everything on both sides of the street. Might as well remake it to the Agenda 21 smart growth model, and there you go. You've used your transportation tax dollars or your tax dollars to develop smart growth and subsidize it. Now in my area, in the San Francisco Bay Area, we have a plan. It's called One Bay Area. You'll see these plans are called One something. You'll find out quite a bit. One state, one valley, one vision. They use the word vision, they use the word one. This one is One Bay Area. It's the same plan as the Hanoi Center Regional Plan 2030 in Hanoi, Vietnam. These plans are all the same plan, and the joke's on you because you're paying over and over for them. Hundreds of thousands of dollars people are paying for these plans, and they're all the same plan. This is a worldwide plan. Regional government. It is the unelected shadow government, and it is sold to you as an economic driver. This is what you're going to see. And don't forget, when you go to those visioning meetings, if you do go, you're visioning on somebody else's property who's probably not there. Right? They didn't get invited. We've got, by the way, if you want to, in the book and also on videos all over YouTube, we've got how to anti-Delphi a meeting. We've got us breaking up meetings. Near riot at Delphi meeting. That's a good one. Yeah, because in fact, you know, they're bringing armed men into these meetings now. Yeah, men with guns. They're called police officers. Yeah, they bring the walls in these government meetings. I say, wow, you must be really scared of us middle class, middle-aged people. We might say something. I've been chased down the aisle of a government meeting with a mic in my hand by a cop. I'm like, what are you going to do, shoot me because I'm going to say something? Wow.
Don't faze me, bro.
Yeah, this is serious. You know, it's called the new urbanism. It's anti-rural. In fact, I just came from Maine, and I was looking at checking out, you know, I researched Maine, right? And I looked at the Earth First, the Maine Earth First chapter. Right on there it says, visualize industrial collapse. Oh, what a great vision. Oh yeah, you gotta love it, don't you? So, smart growth is it's not just the design style. Of course, it's the preferred design style for Agenda 21, but it's not just that. It is an ideology. It's an ideology. The idea that we're going to have transit villages, and this is going to create community. These are the lies you see. What does it do? It destroys community, real community. Transients. That's what you are when you're in an apartment. You're transient. You don't care what's happening next door, much less across the street. This is what this is about, is creating a group of people who do not feel any cohesion or any community. Now, it's global, regional, neighborhood. None of those are elected, are they? Global, regional, neighborhood. We've got city, county, state, fed. You elect all those people. Those are your representatives. You don't like what they're doing, you can boot them out, hopefully. What are you going to do about global, regional, and neighborhood? Now it gets worse. You thought we had 50 states. No.
57. 57.
Yeah, that's right. I need my shield for that. Yeah, okay, you don't have 50 states, you've got 11 megaregions, right? 11 megaregions. Now, it's not like the United States got chopped into 11 pieces. What it is that 26% of the landmass is in major cities. Of course, that's where we're all going to be, major cities. And 74%, wait, let's see, let me get that right. 74% of the population is in 26% of the landmass right now. The plan is to get everybody out of the rural and suburban areas and into the city centers. Now that 11 megaregions, it's not like they chopped up the country. No, because a whole lot of the country is going to be the wildlands. And the rest of it, just these few hub areas. are the megaregion areas. Now you happen to be in a megaregion here. You were in Cascadia. Now I said it breaks jurisdictional boundaries, right? So it's part of Washington, part of Oregon, and part of Canada. That's right. Breaks jurisdictional boundaries. And the one in Southern California, it's called SoCal. So yeah. Is including part of Mexico. Do you have goosebumps? Most of these are Italy cities. Most of these are Italy cities. High-speed rail is the justification for it. They say, oh, you don't need your car, because you're going to have high-speed rail to take you, well, wherever that line goes, and nowhere else. Because you're not going to be going out to the wild lands, because that's why they're wild lands. They're wild. They can't be wild if you're there. Right, so you want to see where it's going? Take a look at the EU, the European Union, which I will remind you started with a trade agreement. I just spoke at an international conference on global governance. I had no idea I was talking about global governance until I got invited to speak at this conference. I was like, great, now I know what I'm doing. So I went to this conference, and it was there was President Václav Klaus of the Czech Republic, former Prime Minister John Howard of Australia, and others. And so Václav Klaus, President Klaus of the Czech Republic, he spoke and he said, you know, when we were in the Soviet Union, part of the Soviet bloc, we wanted nothing more than to be free. And we wanted to be part of the EU. It was our dream. He said, now we're under the thumb of Brussels. This is the reality. This is the reality of losing your jurisdictional boundaries. He says, we have no more sovereignty. Oh, yes, we still exist as a nation. Oh, yes, I am still president of a country. But what can I do? Unelected boards and commissions. That's it. So, the policy, of course, you know, of the United Nations, I know you know this, is from Habitat. Well, of course, they've been working on this since 1945. They've been working on this for a long, long time, since before that. But the UN policy on land use was established in 1976 at the UN Conference on Human Settlements. That's where you live, in human settlements. Right. In fact, you know, it's funny, because my partner's a general contractor, right? And she went to some thing for general contractors, and some guy there said he was the, he had on his card that he builds human habitations. And she brought the card. We laughed so hard. We thought it was so funny, human habitations. The joke's on us. That's what they are called. This was Habitat 1 in 1976. Habitat 1 is about human settlements. Land, this is a quote, land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset. I know you know this, okay? You can even say it with me. Land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset, controlled by individuals and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market. Oh no! Private land ownership is also a principal instrument of accumulation and concentration of wealth, and therefore contributes to social injustice. Ooh, public control of land use is therefore indispensable. Yeah. Hey, if you've got doubts about communitarian law in the U.S., I will take all your questions after. If you've got doubts about communitarian law in the United States, you look no further than the 2005 Kelo decision, right? The Supreme Court of the United States. Now, most people think that that Supreme Court decision said that that the government could take your land and give it to you. No, that was we already had that. It's called redevelopment. No, what the Supreme Court decision, the Kelo decision did, was it said, under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, we are guaranteed just compensation for the taking of our property against our will by our government for a public use. Public public use, like a road, freeway, that's a public use, right? But the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution effectively has been changed now because the Kelo decision said that a public use, it redefined public use to anything your government thinks would be a public use. Yeah, it's the greater good is whatever the government says it is. The end justifies the means. It changed the definition of public use. This is the end of private property, the beginning of the end of private property. It's so much easier to take you through regulations than it is to actually have to pay you, though. They don't have to pay you when they just squeeze you. Because if there's any value left in that property at all, they don't have to pay you. Isn't that nice? So here we are in Washington State, and only 42% of the state of Washington is owned by the federal, state, or local governments. Only. It's not enough, though. You've got over 2 million roadless acres, but they want more. Them. Two, you see partnerships between your government and land trusts. In fact, you see the EPA actually funding land trusts so that they'll sue the EPA and get their legal fees and make law and change policy. This is what's happening all across the United States. I travel all over the United States. I think I was home 4 days last month. I've gone back and forth across the country, all over the country. It's the same everywhere. We have a huge nation, and we barely know what's happening really in the town next door to us. It's so big, we're busy. But you know what? This is a plan for urban people. This plan actually, the people who are into this, a lot of people who are into this are people who live in big cities. They don't even know how huge the country is. They don't fly over it and see that it is essentially an agricultural nation. We have a tremendous amount of open space. In fact, I know there's places out here in Washington that if you drive off the road without your cell phone, you can die there. And nobody's going to find you for a long time, right? Yeah. So, 40% of the land in the continental United States is in a watershed.
How much?
40%. 40%. And in fact, you know, I'm sure it's probably more than that, and somehow or another, it all drains to the Mississippi. I don't know, does the nation look like one of those beds that have slept in too long? I don't know. But you've got 10,000 rivers and streams flowing into the Puget Sound. And there's probably one in your backyard. This is it, best available science, critical areas, ordinances. This is about removing humans and human activity from rural and suburban areas. It's also about extreme population predictions, okay? Because think about this. What are they doing building high-density residential downtown when there's no demand for it? It's sitting there vacant, right?
Yeah.
Okay? But every single place you go in the United States, they're predicting high population increases. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't think I'm going to be on this planet that much longer. And it doesn't take more than about 18 months to build something, so why do they have to build so much in advance? What's the point? Well, because your people are going to come in from the urban, from the suburban and the rural areas, and they need someplace to be. This is the hardscape for your future poverty. High-density development. Now, you know what's unsustainable? Hey, you know what? This is about developing linkages and corridors. This is the lie. This is the green mask. Okay, it's all about Bambi, being able to get together with Bambo. And the linkages, in the corridors. You got the cores, then you got the buffers, then you got the corridors, okay? That's all about little animals. In fact, here we got the North American Wildways. This is a real website telling you how it is that they are going to be able to create, I don't know if you can see this, but this is the North American continent without any boundary lines because animals don't know what country they're in. And you can see a huge portion of it is going to be these corridors. This is the idea, okay? Now, most of Washington State is in this corridor. You don't even need, who needs Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, right? You don't need those states, right? and almost all of Canada. Well, who cares about the Canadians, right? And it goes all the way down into Mexico, too. Maybe that's why they're coming. So, anyway, so there it is, okay? So that's the plan. Well, do they have the money to buy all of that? Well, heck no. No, they don't. So they want to just restrict you from using your property. So you throw your hands up and say, I can't do this anymore. I'm paying taxes for property I can't use. I give up. I'm walking away, and I'm going to go live in that transit village by the train station that doesn't exist. So what's unsustainable? Dams, rivers, erosion control, flood control, straightening rivers, brush cutting, forestry management, marbled murrelet. Or you might have, what else do you got? What do you got? What do you have to deal with when you got land? What do you deal with? You deal with view sheds, streamside thresholds, shoreline buffer zones, scenic easements, biotic resources, right? Regulatory takes. These are all regulatory takings. I call it no pay APA, American Planning Association. Remember that book? Remember I told you about it, right? It's got a whole chapter on how not to pay you for your land. Check it out. All right, so I just came from Maine. There's a thing there. 2 countries, 1 forest. 2 countries, 1 forest. 2 countries, 5 states, 4 provinces, 80 million acres. They want to make off limits to human beings. And if you are so inclined to sell a conservation easement to a land trust that will now split your title and give you some money, maybe for land that wouldn't develop anyway, so you're a crony, you got some money stick in your pocket now. Nothing was going to be happening there anyway, because you know nobody can do anything with their land, right? So what are they paying for? But anyway, okay, they'll pay you for that, but they won't pay you when they're actually, they'll pay you for a conservation easement, but they don't pay you when they're doing a regulatory taking. Oh yeah, that makes sense to me. So, if you do sell a conservation easement and you're not allowed to cut your trees down, well, how are they going to know? Are they going to knock on your gate, your locked gate, and say, Mister, I want to come in and see your trees? No, they're not. They have, through the World Resources Institute, ding, 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 they were on the President's Council on Sustainable Development. World Resources Institute has a program called Global Forest Watch. Global Forest Watch. Global Forest Watch. They have NASA satellites that fly every 16 days the planet, and they take pictures. Now, okay, I told you I just came from the East Coast, right? New Hampshire, Maine. You fly over those states, you're going to look down, what are you going to see? Trees. That's all they have there, trees. They inventory and control, right? They have inventoried every single tree. Now, they haven't just counted the tree, they have identified the tree, this tree species. Every 16 days, a NASA satellite flies and identifies. Now, their plan is within 5 years to be able to get down to between 5 and 10 meters in resolution. That's between 15 and 30 feet from, I don't know how many miles. Is that a drone? So, anyway, it's serious. So, how are they getting you out of the rural areas? How are they getting you out of, well, one way, of course, is to, restrict your use to the point where you're desperate and have to get out of there. You just lost the property. You can't do anything with it, right? That's one way. Another way is by pulverizing your roads. In my county, I live in Sonoma County, beautiful county. It's the wine country of California. Okay, we have 1,384 miles of rural roads. 1,384 miles of rural roads in our county. Well, our county supervisors announced in 2010 that they just don't have enough money to maintain those roads, and they only intend to maintain 150 miles. 100, and if you're not lucky enough to be one of those roads, well, that's just too darn bad for you, right? How's that going to be for your land value? How's that going to be for your Mr. Farmer getting your wine, your grapes to market, or whatever else you got out there? Is that going to have an impact on your ability to sell your property, to use your property, to mortgage your property, to lease your property, to own your property, closure of rural post offices, closure of rural schools, reduction in services out there. And then you got, of course, you know, hey, everybody's off of the road now, so the infrastructure can't be supported. Mr. Jones, you don't expect us to pave that now, do you? And guess what? It says right in here on this clipping from about the potholes, because they're turning these rural roads to gravel, and that's what's happening immediately. You can't drive them. And the county has been further handicapped by a federal funding system that favors more urban, populated areas. There it is, right? And then besides that, you've got stuff like this. And I know you guys know about Elwha, right? The Elwha dams. But how about this one? This is even better. This is Hetch Hetchy. Okay, now you don't know about Hetch Hetchy, but I do. Hetch Hetchy was a beautiful valley in Yosemite area. It's like a partner, it's like a twin of Yosemite Valley. But back in the early 1900s, turn of the century, they dammed it. They closed that valley, they dammed that valley, and now it has 117 billion gallons of water. It's a reservoir. It is the water source for San Francisco. Now, guess what? There is a local measure on the ballot in November to drain the 117 billion gallon Hetch Hetchy Reservoir so that this beautiful valley can be restored. Right? Now get this, you're going to really dig this, you know. I know you're going to like this. Wait till you hear this. Who's supporting it? Who wants it? The Republican lawmakers and environmentalists, including Ronald Reagan's former Interior Secretary. Yeah, Don Hodel. And what does he say? He says, I think, listen to this, You talk about Machiavellian? I think it will be hard to quell this idea of restoration. It's like ideas of freedom in a totalitarian regime. Once planted, they are impossible to remove. He's standing on that. And look at, here's what the Democrats, who's the Democrats, right? Feinstein, Boxer, Pelosi, they're like, no, what are you doing? That's our water, right? The mayor of San Francisco says, this is a ridiculous idea. It's a Trojan horse. We do not have an alternate, a water alternate. They're going to vote for it. Watch, I betcha. There you go. 60 million roadless acres in the United States, and it's not enough because Bambi's going to get eaten by those wolves, right? I mean, this is about bringing back wild carnivores. I was in Florida. They're bringing back the Florida panther. I think I'll go take a hike. What about you? Okay, so look at this. This is the only economy we've got, right? Taxes, fines, penalties, lawsuits, and government grants. Your government is desperate for money. Desperate. And then along comes some non-governmental organization, some nice little group, some federal agency with a whole bunch of cash. Agenda 21 is a plan to produce social equity by impoverishing populations and creating total dependence on government. That's what it's about. You're going to get smart meters off the side of your 200-unit building that's government subsidized. Think you're going to be doing that? You know what you do when you've got government subsidies for your housing? You got to tell them everything about yourself. In Queensland, Australia, right now, they decided they don't have enough housing, enough low-income housing, and you're going to have to double up. Yeah, I wish I was joking. You have to show who's in the house with you, and you either move to a unit that's smaller or you take in people who are assigned to you. Yeah, assigned to you. This is coming. This is coming. Austerity measures. This is the corporatocracy tightening the screws. This is what it's about, okay? Public-private partnerships are about transferring our public assets to private ownership of corporations and calling it public. You know, prisons, right? Prisons. This is my favorite public-private partnership. Privately owned prisons? Oh my goodness. I want stock in that. What do prisons need? Prisoners. How do you get more prisoners? Make more things crime. Right? And make sentences longer. Hey, how about the deportation thing, right? Oh, you got a porous border? You got a little catch and release program. You know that when somebody gets caught at the border or somewhere else, in Redmond or something, and they're going to stick them in jail, right? Have a little private prison there. They keep them for about 6 months. That's a lot of money. That's a whole lot of money. Oh, what a good business that is. So here it is, using the cover of environmentalism. The rigid control of a totalitarian state is in progress right now. That's what's behind the green mask. It's an abuse of our trust. It's a hijacking. It's a hijacking of the environmental movement, right? You want to see what it looks like? It looks like the USA Patriot Act and the National Defense Authorization Act. Let's get down to it. All totalitarian states share the same characteristics. Total control of property and means of production, total information, surveillance, loss of free speech, consensus. That does not allow for dissent. They do not allow for dissent. You go ahead and try that. Try that in a visioning meeting. Try and dissent in a visioning meeting, and you will see quickly how those officers ringing the walls are going to let you know that you live in a free country. Restricted movement. Restricting your ability to move freely. Restricting your ability to drive, to go where you wish. They also share a common philosophy. It's all for the common good. The individual is selfish. They also share the Spartan present. Pull in, restrict, right? Economize, live simply. You eat too much. You use too much. You drive too much. Those vehicle miles travel taxes, how are they going to do that? How are they going to put a vehicle miles travel tax on you? They're going to have to put a GPS monitor on your vehicle. Inventory and control. What else do all totalitarian states share in common? The vision of the glorious future. Oh, it's going to be great. We're all going to be living downtown in this cool apartment. Oh, we'll be hanging out in the downstairs coffee shop because nobody's going to have to work. And it's not going to rain or snow, no matter where you live in the entire country. You're going to be on your bike. It's going to be great. Oh, there goes the train. Yeah, here we are. Beautiful. Vision of the glorious future. And what else do they share? Terror. Terror. The war on terror is a war on you. I know you know that. Have you flown lately? This happens to me. I fly all the time, and I never go through the thing, right? I won't do it. And they go, you know, that's not really an extra. I go, I know. Just, I don't care, whatever you say. Right, so they pat down. One wants a pat down. Pat down over here. Woman, one wants a pat. Stand over there. Stand over there. So you're standing there, trying to make eye contact with these people who go by they won't look at. I've been cut out of the herd. I'm obviously bad. I must have done something. No one will look at me. Here I am, barefoot, waiting to get patted down. So here I go. I'm like this. And this is what I do every single time. So I have to go to the airport an extra half hour early. Because there she is. She's doing her thing. And I look at her and I go, so, is this all you can think of to do for money? Is there anything you wouldn't do for the money? Have you asked yourself that? Have you asked yourself how far you'll go for them? That usually keeps me there for an extra half hour. So, communism, Nazism, fascism. It's all for the fatherland. It's all for the homeland. Right? This is what it looks like. It's all for the common good as defined by your rulers. That's it, okay? Those smart gas, electric, and water meters, think about this. You're a dissenter, right? You're me. 3 o'clock in the morning. You go and turn on your lights and nothing happens. Because your smart meters can be shut off remotely. Right? Okay. Who's doing it to you? Here's IBM. IBM. Cities bring down their own energy costs. Peak energy loads fell by 15% when IBM helped homes in the Pacific Northwest talk straight to the grid. IBM, smart growth, smart meters, smart grid, and what? Collaborator with the Nazis during World War II. IBM, woo, there it goes. IBM collaborated with the Nazis. How were the Nazis able to do so much? Those numbers on the arms, that wasn't your number 1, your number 2, your number 3. No, that wasn't that. That was you are from this area, you are going here, and this is, details on your race. That was what was tattooed on your arm. IBM came up with that. IBM made the punch cards. IBM made the computers for the Germans. IBM made a wholly owned subsidiary. A wholly owned German subsidiary, and ran it in Germany, and was fully aware. Fully aware. Who else is doing it to you? Siemens Corporation. You like Siemens? They're really big on smart growth. They give awards for smart growth. They're into the smart grid. They're into that. Light rail and heavy rail, that is Siemens as well. What else did Siemens do? They helped to fund Growing Smart, legislative guidebook, model statutes for planning the management of change. Siemens is a company, a German company, that was almost bankrupt in World War II when Hitler came to power, except then Hitler generously granted them slave labor from the concentration camps. Siemens. Who else? B of A and the American Bar Association together working on removing the roadblocks. How to make sustainable development happen now. Boy, that looks good, doesn't it? I can't wait to move in there. Doesn't that look great? Yeah. How about National Association of Realtors? You paying your dues with the National Association of Realtors? Here it is. On common ground. How cool smart growth is. Boy, I love it. How about this? You don't have to get that. Thank you. As long as you're up. All right, check this one out. Now this, if you're an elected official or you want to be an elected official, I hope, or anybody, I hope you're going to be really pissed when you hear about this. This is the American Bar Association, the American Planning Association. They know they're at war. This is a war, okay? You need to know you're at war. They know they're at war. What did they do? They put out a 12-week communications boot camp for planners. Why? Because people like me are out here telling the truth about sustainable development. A 12-week-long boot camp. This is just a piece of it. What do they say? Key strategy, inoculate elected officials. Yeah, cultivate influentials. They call it quality growth now. They don't want you to, oh, they're onto the smart growth thing. Let's call it quality growth now. They won't fall. They'll think, this is it. They're the ones who say, oh, Agenda 21, we've never heard of it. We don't know what you're talking about. They're lying. They're lying. Who else? Neighborhood associations. In Seattle, the Department of Neighborhoods hired facilitators to run the local neighborhoods because, you know, we don't want that messy problem of having actual neighbors running their neighborhood associations, do we? We need buy-in. We need consensus. We need people to come down to city council and say they want smart growth. How do we get that? We plant our own people in the neighborhood associations. This happens all over the United States. Everywhere. Everywhere. They use peer pressure. They identify dissenters. Don't be afraid. You can't be afraid. This is not the time to be afraid. They're not holding a gun to your head now.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not going to do it now, you'll certainly not do it when they're holding a gun to your head. So, where else? The city of Bellevue, they had a neighborhood forum, a series of them, at the City Hall, sharing responsibility for the common good. Common good works, vision for stewardship and communal responsibility, looking deeply into shared values. Sponsors, the City of Bellevue and a dozen neighborhood associations. Yeah. Community-oriented policing, that's about spying on you. Community-oriented policing. It's sourced, the finances come out of the Department of Justice, right? Code enforcement, officers, hey, they're armed in some places. They want to keep you obedient and quiet. Obedient and quiet. E3Washington.org, that's education, environment, and economy. They changed one of the E's. Statewide comprehensive plan and sustainable communities. Their partnership list, this is a partnership, a public-private partnership. It's about lifelong learning and training you how to be a global citizen. Right? Their partnership list is as tall as me. ABCD, asset-based community development. That is about mandatory volunteering. Mandatory volunteering, don't you love it? Yeah. Hey, who's heading that one up? Jim Dyers, who was the head of the Department of Neighborhoods in Seattle. He's now working with the University of Chicago. And they also trained who? Obama. Yes, Obama. Michelle is on the faculty of the Asset-Based Community Development Institute. Where else? Oregon State University, and this is just an example. All the universities have this, but this is an interesting one because it's Geology 300. Sustainability for the common good. Geology 300. Sustainability for the common good. 3 credits. It is a core course for the BA. You've got bike coalitions. You've got, hey, how about this? I know you guys are giving charity. You know, you give charitable contributions, right? You're volunteers. You do stuff like that, right? You're good people. You want to do that. You know who you're volunteering for? Do they support this plan? Very likely. The Lung Association has an advocacy arm that advocates, lobbies for smart growth. Your church, is your pastor giving you a sermon about sustainable development? You better go have a chat with your pastor. So, check it out. I do not blame you. You know, this is heavy. Now we're at the good part. This is the good part. Don't leave now. I don't blame you. You know, I don't blame you if you're feeling overwhelmed. Who isn't? Who's not overwhelmed? It's an assault, right? It is an attack on us. It is a bloodless coup d'etat. It is an administrative coup d'etat, and it is in progress right now. And I'll tell you what, there is no Switzerland in this war. People come up to me after my speeches and they go, so, Rosa, where can we go? I'm like, you can't go anywhere. You got to stay right here. You stay right here locally and you fight it locally because you know the people who are local. You need to identify and expose collaborators. The first thing you do is educate yourself and you educate others because awareness is the first step in the resistance. You can't fight if you don't even know there's a war going on. And look at how brilliant this thing is. We're at square one with everybody. They all think we got a tinfoil hat on. I want stock in the tinfoil companies. You know, so there's no silver bullet. Nobody's going to come riding in on a white horse and save you. This is for every single person. This is a nonpartisan fight. We're doing this together. This is what the resistance is. It's a fight for the hearts and minds of our nation. And it's not about being a Democrat or Republican, because freedom, of course, is nonpartisan. So you want to withdraw your financial and your volunteer support from any nonprofit or group that is supporting sustainable development. Okay? And that means you need to check it out. You need to look at who's on. They love to advertise these things too. It's on everybody's website. It's easy to do your research now. You find out who's on your staff, who's the staff, who's the executive director, where do they get their funding from, where do they work, what building is it. You'll find a lot. That's what you're going to do. Okay? You want to dominate your government meetings. Dominate your government meetings. Get in there. Look at this room. If we agreed that for a couple of weeks even, we would take turns going to everyone's town during their council meeting. And we would keep them there all night saying, we want out of Italy. We do not want to support climate action plans. We do not want anything to do with that federal money. If your elected official is turning down a federal grant, you better be there. Because that is suicide. You've got to be in that room and say, yes, we are with you. We would rather not have the money. That's a tough thing to do. You've got to be there. What else do you want to do? We've got flyers. Those flyers and those chairs, those are not for you to look out and throw out. Those are for you to make 100 of, each one, and get up and get out there and put them on porches all over town, wherever you are. And then do it again next weekend, right? You want to encourage your local government to withdraw from the Council of Government. You want to get out of the Council of Government. That is voluntary, your Council of Government. You want out of there. If you're paying dues to your Board of Realtors, to a union, the AFL-CIO in 2001, what did they do? They made a platform, their platform. They said, we repudiate sprawl, and we support smart growth. Why? Because most AFL-CIO members are in urban areas. Pay your dues under protest if you have to pay, but let them know why. You want to speak out. This is it. This is the time. If you go to a city council meeting and you're too scared to say anything, it takes a little nerve to get up there and talk. You know, I mean, I've seen people like this with their thing that they're reading. I don't know how they can see it, right? But read it if you can't, if you're too nervous. Or hold a sign. Get up there. You know what? We have a city council. They won't let you applaud, right? You're supposed to go like this, right? This is the woo, yeah, we're doing the hokey pokey now. Yeah, this is free speech. Well, I take my 3 minutes and I clap for the whole 3 minutes. That's it. You want to, okay. No wonder they don't like me, right? Okay, recall. You've got that power. What you need to do is take a look at that Puget Sound Regional Council. You choose someone who's weak on that council, and you announce that you are taking that person out. That's somebody who's not up for election right now, who's sitting on the board. You say, we're taking you out because you're on the Puget Sound Regional Council. We do not recognize regional government, and we want you out of there. And you are going to be the poster child for what we're going to be doing in the future to anybody who's on that regional board. And then you all work together and get that person off of that. You take them down. And I don't care if that council says, all right, Joe, we'll replace you and they'll leave you alone. No, no, you stay on it. You say, oh yeah, bait and switch, right, forget it. We're still getting you off. We're going to take you down. And we're going to let people know. We need to know the power we have. We have tremendous power. We are the people. Right? Right. It takes a lot of nerve and energy and time to run for office. When you find somebody that you agree with, you support that person in every way you can. We need those people. They are sacrificing. Be one of those people. Break that left-right paradigm. I told you I'm a liberal Democrat, right? You know what? It's hard. This can be hard, right? I go around the country, I can't tell you the situations I've been in. It's been pretty wild, right? And I am grateful because I get to see my country and I get to be with my people. And although we don't agree on many, many things, what we do agree on is that our nation is worth fighting for. Yeah. And this is something that is so important to all of us. So we want to break that red-blue gang color thing. We want to stop doing that. We are Americans, and we care about this. And you know what? That kind of an idea, and they lie. Of course, they're up there going, we're all Americans, Obama and Romney and all, oh, we're all Americans. This terrifies them. This is scary. To really get together like that, that is terrifying to the people in power because they want us fighting each other so we don't look at them. So, there's no heroes, there's nobody on the sidelines, and I know, right now, I'm looking at my people, I know that there is nobody in this room who thinks to themselves that they would have gotten up in the morning and put on a Nazi uniform. Is there anybody in this room that thinks that they would have done that? No. You all think you would have been in the resistance, don't you? Yep. Yeah. This is your time. This is your moment. This is the resistance. This is what it looks like. This is what it is. And we are taking back our nation. You won't see this in the mainstream press. They aren't reporting it. It's happening everywhere. We are getting up. We are taking back our country. We are taking over our government meetings. We are refusing to be Delphi. We are not allowing ourselves to be ridiculously sidelined and maligned and shamed. We will stand strong. We will support each other. And we will win this. We are going to prevail. Thank you.